We need to talk about this book. Those of you who saw my readathon, in which I primarily read this book as well, Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norell, know that I didn't really like the first 200 pages of this book, because I thought it was just men talking about how great they are. But little did I know that the second part of the book, called Jonathan Strange, it's divided up into 3 parts. Mr. Norell, Jonathan Strange, and John Uskerglass, I think it's called. I'm not entirely sure. But the first part, Mr. Norell, was approximately 220 pages long, and I disliked it quite a bit. But the second part, being Jonathan Strange, was so much better, and I enjoyed it enormously. Like, we saw somebody practicing magic in London as well as in the war with Napoleon. And now that we're moving into the third part, the plot really starts to pick up, and a lot of things happens which you could see coming, but seeing them in person was still very shocking and intriguing as well. And it's just getting better and better, I feel like. I also like Jonathan Strange a great deal more than I like Mr. Norell. Mr. Norell, for me personally, is the depiction of old magic in this book. If you don't know, this book is about Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norell, who are kind of the depictions of old magic versus new magic, and their battle against each other, and also their fight to establish modern magic in Napoleon era England. And it's really kind of a mix of Jane Austen and Charles Dickens, and it's a lot about the society as well, at least in the first part, but that focus kind of shifted in the second and third part now, which I am very much enjoying. And to get back to what I was saying before, for me, Mr. Norell is very much a depiction of an old bitter man who does not want to share his knowledge and his books with anybody. And I despise that enormously. But then on the other side, we've got Jonathan Strange, who is very much the opposite of him. So I kind of see where Mr. Norrell's persona is coming from, and that it's supposed to depict the contrast to the other one. But I still have to say that Jonathan Strange is so much more enjoyable. Reading about him and his life, and about the books he's publishing, and about the way he's learning to practice magic, and how he's kind of becoming this great magician. Because when we meet Mr. Norell, he already is a magician, and we follow Jonathan Strange as he becomes his pupil and learns magic and learns practicing magic. And it's just, I don't know, Jonathan Strange is such a great character. But perhaps out of all of the characters that are in this book, I think I like Childermas the best, who is kind of the lawyer and servant of Mr. Norell, but he's a very ambiguous figure, and throughout the book we find out more about him, and he's kind of mysterious and very much of a grey character as well, and I'm just enjoying that a lot. And he's also very witty, so I really like witty characters in books as well, because it just makes me laugh out loud sometimes. Yeah, so I am very much enjoying this book now, as opposed to the first 220 pages. And I really can't wait to see how this will end. I'm currently on page 589 out of, I believe, 850-ish pages. So it's a little under 300 pages to go, and I will update you on how I like the ending.
Yeah, and then turn around, then we can go back around and then come back again. Because
nächste Station.
Later now, and I need to talk about some books with you because I actually did manage to finish Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norell by Susanna Clarke, I think 2 or 3 days ago, and I'm not really sure how I feel about the ending. The book in total was actually quite good, and I would probably overall rate it like a 7 out of 10. I really enjoyed the atmosphere and I really enjoyed reading about Jonathan Strange. I felt like the ending was at the same time kind of fitting to the plot and the story, but simultaneously it was very unsatisfactory as well, because I just thought this was going to wrap up in a very different way. Some things I saw coming, but they then had a twist which I did not see coming either. And just like what happened to Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norell at the end, I'm not sure how I like that and how I feel about that, but overall it's a good book. I wouldn't recommend it to everybody, but if you are into kind of historical settings, especially like the war between England and France in the early 1800s, I would go pick this up because this feels very well researched, and I agree with the introduction by V.E. Schwab in that Susanna Clarke really manages to kind of weave the magic into history, so it feels a little bit like it actually happened, which is kind of cool. But yeah, that was Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norell. I don't know if I'm going to reread it anytime soon, but it was a good book and I'm gonna keep it on my shelf for a while. And then I started a very short book in comparison to the other one, which was 850 pages actually. So the book I'm reading and heavily annotating right now, as you may have already seen in the clips before, is Orbital by Samantha Harvey. I saw this around on the internet, and I also saw that it won the Booker Prize in 2024. So I decided to pick it up when I saw it at the bookstore the other day. There was a bookstore opening where I am right now, and I love bookstore openings. So I went in there and they had one copy of this left. So I picked it up and I started reading it almost immediately because I only had Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norell with me here. And since I finished it, I really needed like another book to pick up, so I decided to pick up this one. And I really have to say that Samantha Harvey's writing style is just out of this world, which kind of fits the overall theme of this book. Orbital is about 6 astronauts who are on a space station for 9 months circling the Earth, and it's kind of like a perspective on life on Earth, life in space, a little bit of climate change as well, but not like explicitly, but more like an underlying theme. And it's just reflections on how we see the Earth and how our perspective changes when we see the Earth from the outside, basically. I really love the writing style. There are so many beautiful passages in here. So I am, as I already said, heavily annotating it, just because I read the first page and I desperately felt the need that I wanted to like add something. So I did, and let me tell you, there's not a single page in here that is not annotated, which is kind of funny to me, but also speaks of how good I find this book. Just the reflections in here are very, very beautiful. And I would very much recommend this book to anybody who is into very beautiful writing. It's kind of flowery as well, and who is searching for a shorter book which is very different. So it's kind of refreshing to read something else. It's also very insightful. I think at one point Samantha Harvey stated the idea that astronauts get, what if we already died and the Earth is heaven? And I find this such an interesting question to think about. And there are multiple of these like themes and questions. Let me see if I can find something to read to you. So one of the passages I marked on page 39 says, "The island's daylit half lies lush and dragon-like, its mountains mythical in the long-last light, its coast outlined by bioluminescent shores, its dark harbours a shadow on royal blue water, an electric light or two on the coast." And there was also a description of the aurora borealis on page 41, which they saw from space, which must be pretty special to be honest. And one of the passages I marked down here says, "At the top of the towers is a swathe of magenta that obscures the stars, and across the globe is a shimmering hum of rolling light, a flickering, quavering, flooding light, and the depth of space is mapped in light. Here the flowing, flooding green, there the snaking blades of neon, there the vertical columns of red, there the comets blazing by, there the close stars that seem to turn, there the far stars fixed in the heavens, beyond them the specks that can barely be seen." Yeah, so I'm very much enjoying this one. I hope I can convince you to have a look at this book as well, because it's just so good and I'm very much enjoying it. And then I also visited a friend of mine and we went to the bookstore because naturally we both love books, and I got a book that I've been eyeing for quite some time now, and it's called Femina, and it's basically about women in medieval history, which I think is really interesting personally, because history is just mostly set around male historical personalities and male perspectives. So taking this same history but focusing on the women instead is just a really interesting concept to me. And it's divided up into different like types of women, like leaders, artists, researchers, queens. So it's just really interesting and I can't wait to get into this. I already read the introduction and it sounds very promising. And I think this book has quite a few good reviews as well, so I will report back to you on how I like this when I start reading it. I'm gonna go to the cafe now probably. I didn't have a good day so far. I'm feeling a little bit under the weather, so I'm gonna try to change that. I already got out of my pyjamas and I'm just gonna take a few things and then go journal and read a little bit more of Orbital at the cafe. Okay, so it seems like every single time I go to the cafe, there is not a single free spot. I got a chai latte with oat milk as a takeaway instead, and it's honestly not making my day much better, but I'm making like a make-do cafe at home now. I've moved like the little table in front of the window, so I have a window seat at my little cafe, and I'm gonna journal here now. I mean, that wasn't really the plan, and I'm not very happy about it, but I'm trying my best. And then I need to write some emails too, and then afterwards I hope I can get to watching Little Women, because I've been wanting to do that for weeks and it's one of my favourite films, so I kind of feel like rewatching it, especially because it's cold outside and the majority of Little Women is set during winter, so it's kind of the right time of the year to watch it. And yeah,